On a frigid winter morning in January 1943, the world was stunned by the news that echoed across the airwaves. General Friedrich Paulus, newly appointed Field Marshal, had surrendered the once dominant German Sixth Army in the devastated ruins of Stalingrad. What had begun as a German offensive to capture a key Soviet city had turned into one of the bloodiest and most brutal battles in human history. The streets of Stalingrad became a hellish labyrinth of death, where soldiers fought not just the enemy, but also the relentless cold and starvation. This is the story of how one battle became synonymous with unparalleled brutality, where the clash of two ideologies resulted in an unimaginable loss of life and a turning point in World War II. In this journey, we will explore why the Battle of Stalingrad was so deadly, examining the strategic importance, the brutal urban warfare, the harsh winter conditions, and the human and strategic miscalculations that led to this unprecedented catastrophe. Chapter number 1: Strategic Importance and Symbolic Significance. In this chapter, we delve into the profound strategic importance and symbolic significance of Stalingrad, a city that became the focal point of one of the most brutal and consequential battles in history. Stalingrad was not just another city on the map, it was a powerful symbol of Soviet resilience and strength, bearing the name of the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin himself. For Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime, capturing Stalingrad was more than a military objective. It was a psychological and political prize that would humiliate Stalin and demonstrate Nazi superiority to the world. The city's symbolic weight was matched by its strategic importance. As a key industrial hub, Stalingrad was a crucial center for Soviet production of war materials, including tanks, ammunition, and other essential supplies that kept the Soviet war machine running. The city's factories and production facilities were critical to the Soviet Union's ability to continue its resistance against the German invasion. For the Germans, seizing Stalingrad offered the potential to deal a crippling blow to Soviet industry, thereby weakening their enemy's capacity to wage war and securing vital resources for the Axis powers. The battle for Stalingrad would thus be fought, not only for control of a city but for the broader ideological and material stakes that it represented. The ferocity of the conflict was fueled by this combination of strategic necessity and symbolic importance, leading to a brutal and unrelenting struggle where every inch of the city was fiercely contested. As we now prepare to move forward, the next chapter will immerse us in the harrowing reality of urban warfare, where the streets, buildings, and ruins of Stalingrad became a nightmarish battleground for close-quarter combat. Chapter number 2: Urban Warfare Dynamics. Continuing from the symbolic and strategic importance of Stalingrad, this chapter plunges us into the harrowing dynamics of urban warfare that defined the brutal struggle for the city. The dense, urban landscape of Stalingrad, with its shattered buildings, sprawling factories, and labyrinthine streets, transformed the city into a nightmarish battlefield where close-quarter combat became the norm. It was the very fabric of the city, its bombed-out factories, crumbling basements, and even its sewers became the stage for some of the most intense and deadly fighting of the Second World War. In this chaotic environment, the distance between life and death was often measured in mere feet, with soldiers engaging in fierce, hand-to-hand combat that left no room for retreat or mercy. The battle lines were fluid, with buildings changing hands multiple times in a single day, each one becoming a blood-soaked fortress defended to the last man. The intensity of the combat was staggering, with both the Germans and Soviets enduring massive casualties as they fought over every inch of the devastated city. And the relentless house-to-house fighting, marked by a ceaseless cycle of attack and counterattack, turned Stalingrad into a charnel house, where the price of progress was measured in lives lost and blood spilled. This brutal, unyielding struggle was a grueling test of endurance for both sides, with the unforgiving urban terrain amplifying the horrors of war. As we prepare to move forward, the next chapter will delve into how the already hellish conditions of Stalingrad were made even worse by the onset of the harsh Russian winter, compounding the suffering and turning the battle into an even more deadly conflict. Chapter number 3: Harsh Winter Conditions. As we transition from the brutal urban warfare, this chapter delves into the unforgiving winter conditions that became a decisive factor in the Battle of Stalingrad. The battle, which began under the scorching summer sun of 1942, stretched into the depths of the Russian winter, a season known for its merciless cold. As temperatures plummeted far below freezing, Stalingrad transformed from a city of ruins into a frozen wasteland, where survival became as challenging as combat. The soldiers, already exhausted from months of relentless fighting, now faced a new enemy in the form of frostbite, hypothermia, and the bitter cold that seeped into their bones, sapping their strength and will to continue. The brutal winter also wreaked havoc on machinery and equipment, causing vehicles to seize up and weapons to malfunction, further complicating the already dire situation. For the German forces, who were ill-prepared for such extreme conditions, the winter proved to be a fatal blow. Their supply lines, stretched thin and vulnerable, faltered under the weight of the cold, leading to severe shortages of food, ammunition, and medical supplies. The soldiers, many of whom lacked proper winter clothing, were left to suffer in the open, their morale and physical condition deteriorating rapidly. On the Soviet side, though better equipped and more familiar with the harsh winter, the conditions still posed significant logistical challenges, straining their ability to maintain the relentless pressure on the encircled German forces. The winter cold turned every aspect of the battle into a desperate struggle for survival, where the environment was as deadly as the enemy. In the following chapter, we will explore how these critical errors contributed to the inevitable and catastrophic German defeat at Stalingrad. Chapter number 4, Human and Strategic Miscalculations. In this chapter, we delve into the critical human and strategic miscalculations that ultimately doomed the German Sixth Army at Stalingrad. Following the harsh urban warfare and brutal winter conditions, central to the German disaster was Adolf Hitler's rigid and disastrous strategic thinking. His fixation on capturing Stalingrad, a city of immense symbolic and strategic value, blinded him to the changing realities on the ground. Despite mounting evidence that the situation was untenable, Hitler's orders remained inflexible. The city had to be held at all costs. This dogmatic approach prevented Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus from executing a strategic withdrawal that might have saved his forces from encirclement. Instead, Paulus and his army were ordered to stand their ground in a city that was rapidly becoming a death trap. The consequences of this decision were devastating. The German Sixth Army, cut off from supply lines and reinforcements, found itself encircled by the Soviet forces in Operation Uranus, a brilliantly executed counteroffensive. Meanwhile, the Soviets, under Stalin's relentless command to defend the city with everything they had, turned each building into a fortress, utilizing snipers, artillery, and coordinated infantry attacks to wear down the Germans. These Soviet tactics, combined with the resilience of their troops, made every German advance excruciatingly costly. Hitler's failure to recognize the futility of his position, coupled with Paulus's inability to defy his orders, ensured that the Sixth Army was trapped with no escape. These human and strategic errors not only led to the decimation of one of Germany's most formidable armies, but also marked a pivotal turning point in World War II, as the tide of the Eastern Front began to shift decisively in favor of the Soviets. As we continue, the narrative will focus on the decisive moment of encirclement and the harrowing siege that led to the inevitable surrender of the German Sixth Army, marking one of the most significant defeats in military history. Chapter number 5, Encirclement and Siege. In this chapter, we explore the pivotal moment in the Battle of Stalingrad, the encirclement and siege that irrevocably sealed the fate of the German Sixth Army. Following the catastrophic human and strategic miscalculations we discussed earlier, the Soviet Union launched Operation Uranus in November 1942, a brilliantly conceived counteroffensive that changed the course of the battle and the war. The operation, meticulously planned and executed, targeted the weaker flanks of the German forces, which were manned by less experienced and poorly equipped Axis allies. The Soviet pincers closed swiftly, and within days, over 250,000 German soldiers found themselves trapped in a massive encirclement, known as the Kessel, or cauldron, with no viable escape route and no access to reinforcements or supplies. Inside the Kessel, the situation for the encircled German troops deteriorated rapidly. Cut off from supply lines and subjected to relentless Soviet artillery and infantry attacks, the soldiers faced not only the enemy but also the harsh Russian winter and a severe shortage of food, ammunition, and medical supplies. Starvation became the norm, forcing the desperate men to eat whatever they could find: horses, dogs, and eventually rats, to stave off death. Disease spread quickly among the weakened troops, and morale plummeted as the realization set in that relief from the outside was not coming. The proud German army, once considered invincible, was now reduced to a pitiful, starving force struggling just to survive each day. The encirclement and siege of Stalingrad exposed the tragic futility of Hitler's rigid strategic thinking and underscored the relentless determination and strategic brilliance of the Soviet commanders. The siege lasted for months, turning the city into a graveyard for the German forces and marking a significant turning point in World War II. As the German forces teeter on the brink of total collapse, we now shift our focus to the often overlooked but equally devastating impact of this brutal battle on the civilian population of Stalingrad, whose suffering and resilience in the face of unimaginable horror played a crucial role in the city's defense. Chapter number 6, Civilian Involvement and Suffering. In this chapter, we delve into the harrowing reality faced by the civilian population during the Battle of Stalingrad, a period marked not only by military confrontation but by profound civilian suffering. The battle, extending from the late summer of 1942 into the brutal Russian winter of 1943, transformed Stalingrad from a bustling city into a wasteland of ruin and despair. Civilians, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, found themselves trapped between the advancing German forces and the steadfast Soviet defenders. The relentless bombardments and street-to-street fighting left the city in a state of devastation, forcing residents to seek refuge in bombed-out buildings, often lacking basic necessities such as food, water, and medical care. The constant danger and scarcity of supplies meant that survival was a daily struggle, exacerbated by the harsh winter conditions that further impoverished the already dire living conditions. Tragically, the brutality of the battle meant that civilians were frequently targeted, whether intentionally or as collateral damage, leading to catastrophic casualties. Both the Soviet and German forces, in their desperate efforts to secure their positions, conscripted civilians into forced labor, compelling them to work in perilous conditions, building fortifications or clearing rubble under the constant threat of violence. This forced labor, combined with starvation and the omnipresent violence, contributed to a staggering civilian death toll, highlighting the extreme human cost of the battle. As we conclude this examination of civilian suffering, we will next investigate the profound psychological impact of the battle on both soldiers and civilians, exploring how the battle's horrors shaped the lives of those who endured them and influenced the broader course of the war. Chapter number 7, Psychological Impact. In this chapter, we explore the deep psychological scars left by the Battle of Stalingrad on both soldiers and civilians, revealing a complex web of trauma and psychological impact that shaped the battle's aftermath. The intense combat and dire conditions of Stalingrad had a profound effect on those who lived through it. Soldiers on both sides endured relentless violence, witnessing the deaths of comrades, and contending with the harsh winter and acute shortages of supplies. This constant exposure to brutality and deprivation pushed many to the brink of psychological collapse. German soldiers, in particular, faced a mounting sense of despair as the encirclement and siege increasingly highlighted the futility of their situation. Many experienced what would now be classified as post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD), struggling with the mental anguish of their dire circumstances. The psychological toll was not confined to the battlefield, it extended to the civilian population, who endured both physical and emotional hardships. And for the Soviets, Stalingrad became a potent symbol of unyielding resistance and ultimate triumph, which invigorated their resolve and morale. Conversely, for the Germans, the battle's initial promise of victory turned into a symbol of defeat and despair, eroding both public and military morale. The battle's psychological impact was immense, influencing the broader dynamics of World War II and shaping the war's subsequent phases. As we conclude this exploration of the psychological dimensions of Stalingrad, we will next examine the lasting legacy of the battle and its significance in the broader context of the war and history. Chapter number 8, The Broader Impact. In this chapter, we delve into the profound broader impact of the Battle of Stalingrad, examining how it reshaped the course of World War II and its enduring historical legacy. The battle's outcome was a watershed moment, fundamentally altering the trajectory of the conflict. The defeat of the German Sixth Army at Stalingrad not only shattered the illusion of Nazi invincibility, but also signaled the beginning of a significant German retreat on the Eastern Front. This pivotal Soviet victory revitalized Soviet morale and provided the momentum necessary for launching a series of successful offensives. The Soviets, reinvigorated by their triumph, eventually pushed the Germans out of Soviet territory, driving them back toward Berlin. The psychological and strategic consequences were equally far-reaching. For the Soviets, Stalingrad became a symbol of resilience and a turning point in the war, marking a shift from defensive to offensive operations. Conversely, for the Germans, the battle's outcome was a profound blow to their confidence and strategic outlook, highlighting the growing realization that the war would not end in their favor. The lessons learned from the brutal urban warfare and the critical importance of logistics and winter preparedness at Stalingrad influenced military strategies and doctrines in the decades that followed, shaping how future conflicts were approached. The Battle of Stalingrad remains etched in history as one of the most brutal and decisive battles of World War II, serving as a stark reminder of both the immense human cost of war and the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. As we conclude this exploration of Stalingrad's broader impact, we will reflect on how its legacy continues to resonate in historical memory and military strategy. In this conclusion, we reflect on the profound legacy of the Battle of Stalingrad, an event that stands as a defining moment in World War II and a stark reminder of the devastating cost of conflict. The battle was not merely a clash of military forces, but a clash of ideologies, a brutal test of endurance, and a harrowing illustration of modern warfare's brutality. The siege of Stalingrad, with its extreme conditions and relentless combat, became a symbol of resistance and resilience, fundamentally altering the course of the war. The defeat of the German Sixth Army marked a turning point, shifting the momentum to the Soviet forces and heralding the beginning of the German retreat from the Eastern Front. This battle's impact extended beyond the immediate military outcomes, influencing post-war military strategies and leaving an indelible mark on collective memory. The stories of those who fought and perished amidst the ruins of Stalingrad are etched into history, underscoring the immense human suffering and the extraordinary courage displayed in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. As we honor the memory of the countless lives lost and recognize the unyielding spirit of those who endured the harsh realities of this battle, we also acknowledge the broader lessons it imparts about the human cost of war and the enduring strength of the human spirit. In concluding our exploration of Stalingrad, we are reminded of the battle's significance not only as a military engagement, but as a powerful testament to the resilience of humanity against the backdrop of one of history's most devastating conflicts. As we wrap up our deep dive into the epic and harrowing Battle of Stalingrad, we hope this exploration has provided you with a profound understanding of the monumental impact this battle had on World War II and its enduring legacy. The stories of courage, suffering, and resilience that emerged from Stalingrad continue to resonate, serving as a powerful reminder of the costs of war and the strength of the human spirit. If you found this journey insightful, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue to bring you detailed and engaging content on historical events that shape our world. Stay tuned for more in-depth analyses and fascinating narratives from history. Until next time, thank you for watching, and we look forward to sharing more with you soon.